The storm raged like a wild beast over the small, forgotten town, and the wind howled through the skeletal trees surrounding the old mansion. Rain pounded against the broken windows, turning the creaking wooden floors into slick, trembling sheets. Inside, Clara clutched her newborn triplets to her chest, her heart hammering like a frantic drum. Her eyes, wide with terror, searched the shadows of the dimly lit hallway. "Please, Veronica, please don't do this," she begged, her voice trembling with desperation. "They are just babies, innocent babies." Veronica's face was cold, her expression sharper than the knife she held. Her lips curled into a cruel smile as she leaned closer. "Innocent," she hissed. "Do you think innocence matters when greed rules the world, Clara? These children, these burdens, they will take everything from me. Everything." Clara's grip tightened on the soft bodies of her triplets. "They are my children. They don't deserve this. You can't. Her plea was cut short as Veronica snatched the infants with a force that made Clara stagger backward. The old mansion seemed to shiver in anticipation, as if it itself feared the darkness unfolding within. Down the narrow staircase they went, into the cold, damp cellar hidden beneath the mansion's foundation. Cobwebs clung to every corner, and the air smelled of decay and old secrets. Veronica's footsteps were certain and merciless as she prepared to carry out the unthinkable. She raised her hand, ready to seal the fate of Clara's beloved children. Then, lightning struck. A deafening crack ripped through the night, shaking the mansion to its very bones. Veronica screamed, startled, her grip faltering. In that split second of chaos, something inexplicable happened. The babies, they were gone. One moment, they were in her arms. The next, not a trace remained. Clara's knees buckled, her mind struggling to comprehend the impossible. No, they're gone," she whispered, disbelief choking her. Outside, the storm began to settle into an eerie silence. The locals, drawn by the mansion's sinister history, spoke in hushed tones about the cursed cellar. "They say children once vanished down there and were never seen again," an old man would later tell anyone who dared to listen. "It's a place of darkness, a place of secrets." But something strange lingered in the mud outside the cellar steps. Tiny handprints. 3 small, delicate handprints pressed into the soft earth, glistening in the pale light of the moon. It was a subtle, haunting hint that not all was lost. That perhaps, against all odds, someone had survived. The mansion creaked again, as though it knew a secret it would never reveal. And Clara, shivering in the chill of the night, could only hold on to a single fragile hope, that her children, her precious triplets, were still out there somewhere, waiting, unseen, but alive. 20 years had passed since that stormy, unthinkable night. The small town, once shadowed by whispers of curses and vanished children, had settled into a deceptive calm. Streets were lined with blooming trees, children's laughter floated in the parks, and life went on as though the horrors of the past had been nothing more than a bad dream. Veronica, the woman who had once wielded cruelty as easily as a sword, had transformed herself into a figure of wealth and respect. Her mansion gleamed under the morning sun, polished and grand, a testament to decades of power and cunning. She smiled at social gatherings, charmed neighbors, and hosted lavish parties, all the while carrying the secret of the triplets she had tried to bury alive. Meanwhile, Clara, now older and frail, lived quietly in a modest home at the edge of town. Her hair had turned silver, her hands trembled slightly, but her eyes still held the pain and sorrow of that night. She had never married again, never spoken of the children who had vanished. Every corner of her home whispered memories she dared not share, shadows of the past she couldn't erase. Far away, in different cities, the triplets lived lives unknown to one another. Evan worked long hours in a bustling office, always feeling an inexplicable emptiness he could not name. Lily, an artist, painted vivid scenes that seemed to haunt her, landscapes filled with a home she had never truly known. Marcus, studying history in a distant college town, often woke from dreams so vivid he could swear they were memories. Memories of a cellar, a storm, and a mother's desperate face. Strange coincidences began to stir. A whisper here, a shadow there. Fleeting reminders that something was not right, that the past had not truly ended. And then the letters began. Anonymous, elegant, and unnerving, they arrived at Veronica's mansion. Each envelope bore no sender, only cryptic phrases. The past is coming back. And secrets cannot stay buried forever. One rainy afternoon, Evan's routine commute turned into the discovery of a lifetime. On the steps of an old abandoned church, half buried in leaves and mud, he found a delicate locket. Trembling, he opened it, and inside was a family portrait. 3 small faces stared back at him, faces he could not remember, yet somehow knew. His heart raced. Could it be? Could it be possible that his family had survived? That someone had preserved the memory of the night he had thought he had lost everything? Every instinct screamed at him to run, to hide, but curiosity overpowered fear. This locket, old, fragile, and impossibly detailed, was more than a trinket. It was a message, a warning, a key to the secrets that had long remained buried, waiting patiently for the moment to resurface. And as the sun set behind the mansion that had once been the source of so much terror, shadows seemed to shift and whisper, almost as if the storm of 20 years ago had never truly ended. Night had fallen over the town, and the streets were bathed in the soft glow of streetlights. But inside the grand mansion, a storm of a different kind was brewing. The triplets, Evan, Lily, and Marcus, had finally begun to piece together the fragments of their past, each clue leading them closer to one another. Alone for so long, each had survived in unimaginable ways, but now the force of their reunion was unstoppable. Evan, tall and determined, had spent years mastering strategy and technology. Lily, graceful yet fierce, had honed her skills in art and observation, learning to see things others overlooked. Marcus, quiet but calculating, had traveled abroad, mastering languages and acquiring skills that made him nearly unrecognizable. Together, they formed a silent storm, a force of intellect, resourcefulness, and courage, waiting for the perfect moment to confront the woman who had once tried to end their lives. Flashbacks flickered like old film reels in their minds. Evan had been rescued by a kind stranger who found him wandering alone in the pouring rain, clutching the tattered remains of his locket. Lily had been taken into foster care, where a compassionate mentor nurtured her talents, helping her grow strong and independent. Marcus had been sent abroad, where rigorous training and discipline shaped him into a man capable of facing any danger. Each experience, each hardship, had forged them into the people they were now, alive, aware, and determined. Meanwhile, Veronica's world began to unravel. Small things at first, a door left unlocked, a shadow crossing a room, a whisper of movement in the hallway, made her uneasy. She tried to dismiss them, telling herself it was her imagination. But then came the video, a short, unassuming clip that turned her blood cold. There they were, the triplets, fully grown, standing at the gates of her mansion at the stroke of midnight, faces calm but eyes burning with intensity. The camera captured every detail: Evan's calculated stare, Lily's unwavering composure, Marcus's subtle, knowing smile. Veronica staggered back, her hand clutching the armrest of her chair. "Impossible. It can't be," she whispered, her voice trembling. Fear that had long lain dormant clawed at her chest. The children she had thought gone forever were not only alive, they had returned, and they were nothing like the helpless infants she had once tried to bury. Outside the mansion, the wind rustled through the trees, carrying with it the quiet determination of 3 siblings who had endured, survived, and thrived. Their plan was not one of mere vengeance, but of justice. Every step, every glance, and every unspoken word was calculated. The night itself seemed to hold its breath as the triplets prepared to confront Veronica, their presence a living reminder of the consequences of cruelty, greed, and unchecked ambition. And inside the mansion, Veronica's heart pounded as shadows seemed to lengthen and twist unnaturally. She felt eyes on her from every corner, the walls themselves echoing the inevitability of her reckoning. The storm of 20 years ago had returned, and it was more terrifying than she could have ever imagined. The grand mansion stood silent, bathed in the pale glow of the moon, but inside, a storm far more intense than any weather was about to unfold. The triplets, Evan, Lily, and Marcus, walked through the ornate halls with quiet confidence, their presence commanding, their eyes sharp and unyielding. Veronica, seated in her lavish study, glanced up from her papers, startled by the sudden knock. She expected a delivery, perhaps a visitor, but not the figures now standing before her. At first, she did not recognize them. They were not the fragile infants she had once tried to bury. They were grown, transformed, powerful. Their expressions were calm, but their gaze pierced straight to her soul. Who are you?" Veronica stammered, clutching her chair, a tremor in her voice betraying her fear. Evan stepped forward first, holding a small stack of photographs and documents. "You know exactly who we are," he said, voice steady, "and we know exactly what you did. 20 years ago, you tried to end our lives, and now it's time the truth comes out." Lily placed a set of letters on the polished desk, the elegant handwriting unmistakable. "Neighbors remember, Veronica. Witnesses remember. Your lies won't protect you anymore." Her voice, calm but firm, carried the weight of years of pain and survival. Veronica's lips trembled as she tried to deny it, her words frantic. This is impossible. You're imagining things. She faltered, her confidence crumbling as flashbacks flickered in her mind. The stormy night, Clara's desperate screams, the tiny hands that vanished from her grasp. Memories she thought she had buried deep surged like waves, undeniable and relentless. Neighbors and witnesses, drawn by the commotion, began to arrive at the mansion, their murmurs growing louder with each step. One by one they recounted what they had seen, corroborating the triplets' story. Veronica's face paled as the realization struck her. The world she had built on wealth and deception was beginning to collapse. Public humiliation loomed. Legal consequences hovered like a dark shadow over her once perfect life. But the triplets had come not just for revenge, they had a plan far more powerful. Marcus's voice cut through the tense silence. "We're not here to destroy you, Veronica. We're here to change your life. Forever." Veronica's hands shook, her mind racing. Change? How could they possibly? But the triplets' expressions held no malice, only resolution and authority. Every piece of evidence, every witness, every memory aligned into a force she could no longer resist. They had turned the tables completely, not with anger, but with control. The mansion, once a symbol of her dominance and cruelty, now echoed with the undeniable truth. Veronica realized that her reign of fear was over, that the children she had tried to erase had returned stronger than she could have ever imagined. And as the whispers of the town seeped through the grand windows and the weight of consequence settled on her shoulders, she understood. Her life would never be the same. The triplets stood tall, their presence commanding, their power absolute. They had survived, endured, and now they were in control. The sun shone brightly over the town square, casting long shadows across the bustling crowd gathered for the grand annual festival. Veronica arrived in her sleek car, expecting applause, admiration, and whispers of envy. She walked with her usual air of confidence, unaware that the storm of the past she had buried so deeply was about to erupt in the most public, cinematic way imaginable. As she stepped onto the stage for the ceremonial toast, the crowd erupted in polite cheers. But before she could raise her glass, the screen behind her flickered to life. A video played, sharply edited, cinematic, and impossible to ignore. The triplets appeared, fully grown, poised, and powerful. One by one, they told their story, how they had survived, how they had turned the trauma of that stormy night into resilience, strength, and influence. Photos, letters, and accounts of neighbors filled the screen, undeniable evidence of Veronica's past crimes. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Veronica froze, her glass trembling in her hand. Faces she had once charmed now stared at her with shock, disbelief, and silent judgment. Her carefully constructed world of wealth, status, and respect began to crumble before her eyes. This cannot be," she whispered, panic creeping into her voice. Evan stepped forward, calm but commanding. "You tried to bury us, Veronica. You tried to erase our lives, but look around. We are here, alive, strong, united, and now it's your turn to face the truth." Lily followed, her voice steady, carrying over the stunned silence. "You have a choice. Confess and seek true redemption, or walk away from our lives forever. The decision is yours, but know this: the past cannot be ignored, and justice will always find a way." Marcus's gaze swept across the crowd, meeting the eyes of townspeople who had witnessed the events unfold. Murmurs turned to whispers, whispers to collective gasps, and then to stunned silence. Veronica's legs weakened, and she sank to the floor, overwhelmed by the undeniable weight of the truth. The evidence, the stories, the lives she had tried to destroy, all converged in a moment of ultimate reckoning. For the first time, Veronica saw the full impact of her cruelty. She was no longer the woman in control, no longer the figure of wealth and authority. The town, the witnesses, even her own conscience held her accountable. And in that moment, the triplets' power was not just in proof or vengeance, it was in their unity, resilience, and the life they had built despite unimaginable odds. The triplets turned, walking away together, side by side, their steps confident and unwavering. Behind them, Veronica remained, facing the consequences of a life defined by greed and cruelty, left with a choice she had never imagined she would confront. The crowd watched in awe, the impossible made real. Karma had arrived, cinematic and absolute. The unimaginable had become reality, and the triplets, Evan, Lily, and Marcus, stood united, strong and unstoppable, their story a testament to survival, courage, and the power of truth.